Hi, I'm Lauren Brown, President and Director of Corporate Events at Michaelis Events. While we offer a variety of corporate and nonprofit event offerings, this video is specifically to talk about the Louisville Slugger Museum and our great partnership with them. We've worked with the Louisville Slugger Museum since they opened their event space back up in 2022, and we absolutely love working with them and their team. They're a phenomenal space. They're easy to work with, very, very flexible, and we work with them in a variety of options, pretty much with all the services that we offer. So while the museum itself does offer the space, the tables, the chairs, and the in-house bar service, we usually will take it from there and do everything else. So our team is very well versed in Slugger spaces, their logistics, their rules and requirements, and our team absolutely loves being part of any event there at the Slugger. So the Louisville Slugger Museum has quite a few great spaces, and they've actually added a couple in the last year or so. So the most notable of their spaces on the first floor is what's called the atrium in the museum. And like it sounds, that's the museum space, the exhibits themselves, and then they also have the atrium area where you can access the factory tours, the batting cages, the gift shop, things of that nature. The maximum guest capacity for each event space definitely varies from floor to floor. So the atrium in the museum area, you can, again, it's standing space only, so you typically can accommodate somewhere in the 300 to 400 range, in my opinion, in that space. The skybox, again, is more meant to be a seated dinner style setup, so you can accommodate typically somewhere between 200 and 250 in that space. And then the clubhouse, I believe the capacity for that space is somewhere around the 75 to 100. So the Louisville Slugger spaces definitely have a lot of flexibility in how they can be used. As I mentioned previously, the atrium and museum spaces are limited to cocktail and standing style only, so they don't offer any seating in those areas. So not a lot of flexibility necessarily in guest accommodations, but definitely a lot of flexibility in bar placement, food station placement, things of that nature, which is great. The Skybox Museum is somewhat segmented, and the typical setup for that, which works really well for corporate events, is we usually do dinner seating on one side of the floor, which again is in that 200 to 250 range, typically with food and bar stations located in the center. And then the far end of the space, which can be used for additional guest seating, but is oftentimes used for the in-house bourbon tastings and bourbon classes that they offer as part of their event. So while the Slugger Museum does have a lot of fantastic spaces, and it's absolutely an iconic place to visit while you're in Louisville, and I do highly recommend it for out-of-town event groups, unfortunately there is no formal outdoor event space. If you've Googled Slugger at all, or if you are familiar with the space, it definitely and obviously has the iconic bat, which is taller than the building itself and is one of the tallest structures in the city of Louisville. So it's great for photo ops, it's great as a welcome space for guests, but we cannot formally offer any food or beverage or seating of any type out in that space. So the accessibility at the Slugger is very, very guest friendly. So all of the spaces are very easy to enter and exit, not only from a guest perspective, but from a vendor perspective. There is elevators in addition to stairs offered for each floor, and it really is easy to move a large amount of guests, regardless of their accommodations between the spaces. Are there parking accommodations and nearby transportation services for the Slugger Museum? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. So while the Slugger is very centrally located in downtown Louisville, it's in Museum Row, it's also right down from Bourbon Row or Whiskey Row. It's within walking distance of almost every major hotel in downtown Louisville. But in addition to that, Slugger Museum does offer on-site parking in their parking garage. They offer very easy load-in and load-out access. So if you are hosting an event as a corporate planner and you need to bring some things by, very easy to get stuff in and out. They have a bus pull-up at the very front of the museum as well. So a lot of our groups will bus their guests in from their convention or their hotel. And then of course, there's also Uber and meter parking on the street as well. So I would say Louisville Slugger Museum, if needed, absolutely has one of the best parking accommodations in Louisville, but we do find more often than not that our groups typically will bus their guests in, or they will just walk from their hotel. So the Louisville Slugger has a lot of great hands-on and interactive experiences as part of their museum and exhibits. As I've mentioned previously, definitely some of the most popular ones are the batting cages. So any of your guests can get in and attempt to hit a ball at a variety of speeds with their bats and their batting cages, which is a phenomenal experience. They have their factory tours, which is where their ambassadors will take you on the factory floor. It's about a 30-minute tour and you get to see how they make the bats. They also have a VIP bat vault, so you can hold and see some of the bats from some of the world's most famous baseball players. And then of course they have all of their museum exhibits as well, which are very interactive and hands-on. So Slugger by far has some of the best, most interactive experiences of any corporate venue in Louisville, and guests absolutely love them. So does Slugger allow you to offer or to bring in your company branded or your company specific items? And the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. Slugger does not have any restrictions on what you may or may not bring into their space. They are phenomenal to work with. They're incredibly flexible, and we have engaged corporate branding in a variety of ways in their space, whether it's the bar activations or the place settings or the centerpieces or photo backdrops, entry pieces, things of that nature. Pretty much whatever you want to do, we can do in that space, and they are incredibly accommodating. So what are some of the unique themes we've seen in the space? And the answer to that is a variety of options, but obviously being that you're at the Louisville Slugger Museum and you are in bourbon country, typically those are the two things we see highlighted the most, but we have seen those highlighted in a variety of really cool ways. So one of the things that is definitely most popular among our groups is they like to do baseball themed decor. So that's everything from centerpieces to backdrops, photo ops, things of that nature. We also will see a lot of bourbon inspired or bourbon infused food or baseball themed food. So it's not uncommon for us to do, corn dogs, nachos, popcorn, things like that, and have those available for guests. So if you're looking for a little more of an upscale option, bourbon inspired or Kentucky based food is obviously a great way to go. So if you're not familiar with Kentucky cuisine or bourbon inspired cuisine, a lot of the popular items we see are things like hot browns, Kentucky burgoo, bourbon glazed chicken, a little more of a southern flair, chicken and waffle bites, pimento cheese, phyllo cups. So there's all sorts of great options that you can pull in from a food perspective. And then we always recommend offering some sort of really unique or really fun bourbon cocktail at the bar, whether that's an old fashioned, a Manhattan, a Kentucky Mule. There's all sorts of great options there as well. So there's definitely a way to give your guests an authentic Louisville experience, not only playing off baseball, but bringing in the things that we're known for here in bourbon country. So what services does the museum itself provide? And the answer to that is obviously the venue space. They will provide all your tables and chairs. We, as the event planner and caterer, will work with them with your input on the best setup for your event. So we'll communicate with them on how the space needs to be set. They'll take care of setting the tables and the chairs. They do offer a variety of Louisville Slugger based backdrops, photo ops, things of that nature, which is really neat. And then they also do offer bar services in-house. So when you contract an event at Slugger, you will work with their internal team on any of your bar and beverage services, but anything else in regards to catering, linens, centerpieces, additional decor, event planning services, floral, things of that nature, that would be contracted through us and our team. So the types of catering setup I have seen has varied quite a bit depending upon the group size, the goal of the event, and the type of the event. A large majority of the events that we do at Slugger are post-convention cocktail hours, happy hours, guest networking events, things of that nature, or more formal off-site dinners. So when you're in the atrium or the museum space, typically sticking with hors d'oeuvres is the best route to go if you're only going to rent that space, again, because they don't offer any sort of seating in that space. So doing something, whether it's past hors d'oeuvres or hors d'oeuvre stations, that tends to work really, really well with the logistics of that space. When you get up into the skybox, that's often where we would recommend to do a buffet dinner or a plated meal. So a lot of times what we'll see, and for a majority of our groups, especially for those larger groups, They want to bring their guests in, welcome them into the atrium in the lobby, offer bar accommodations, and then past hors d'oeuvres and maybe a station or two. And then usually once we move through that cocktail hour, we're going to progress and move those guests up to the skybox, offer them either a buffet style or a plated style dinner. And then oftentimes once dinner and entertainment is complete downstairs, we will offer dessert back down in the atrium in the museum to kind of encourage that flow and make sure that any of the guests that didn't get a chance to partake in the tours or the batting cages or something like that have a chance to do that after dinner as well. So a lot of flexibility in how we can work with you depending upon what your event wants, but that is a setup that we see very, very often with our groups. So obviously with corporate groups, a lot of times there are dietary restrictions and dietary accommodations, and that's something that we fully understand and are fully prepared to assist with. So depending upon the style of the meal, the service, the logistics of the event, things like that, there's several different ways we can accommodate that. Most of our menus already account for dairy-free, gluten-free, nut-free type menus. But in the event that we need to have a vegetarian, a vegan option, or need to accommodate any of those additional dietary restrictions, that's something that we can easily do. That's something we'll coordinate with you as the corporate event planner ahead of time and make sure that whatever guests need those accommodations are taken care of in a very timely fashion. So the Slugger Museum is phenomenal again for corporate events because they offer most of their AV and sound needs in-house. So what that looks like is on the first floor in that atrium space, they do have a sound system. They typically will play house music, but you can plug your system in if you want to. And then in the skybox, they do offer TV, some other digital options, again, where you can hook into the sound. So if you're having a business meeting or you just need to do a presentation or an award dinner or something like that, that's generally something that they can accommodate with the items that they already have in-house. In the event that you do need to bring in outside entertainment or AV or sound for whatever reason, that's something that we can assist you with from an event planning side, but ultimately there's no restrictions there. So if you've got something that you want to bring in on your own, or if you have another vendor that you would like to work with in regards to those accommodations, you are absolutely welcome to. So does the museum provide an on-site event coordinator? And the answer to that is no in a typical sense, meaning they do provide venue managers and they always have somebody from their security team and their events team on site during the event to take care of all things from a venue perspective, facilities management, things of that nature. In regards to offering any sort of day of support, event assistance, conference assistance, anything like that, that is not a service that they offer, but that is something that our team at Michaelis can absolutely assist and help you with. So that's not a need that we see a lot with these types of events at Slugger, again, because they're typically more off-site networking, social type events. But if that is a need that you have, we'd be more than happy to discuss it with you and find the best solution for your event. So does Slugger Museum's team assist with vendor coordination? And the short answer to that is yes. However, when Michaelis works at Slugger, as we do on a very regular basis, more often than not, our corporate groups are sourcing everything through us, since we offer not only catering in-house, desserts, rentals, floral decor, event planning support, DMC services, entertainment sourcing, all of those items. It's incredibly rare that we see any other vendors at our events. So I would say probably 99% of the time when we are doing an event at Slugger with a corporate client, they are generally sourcing everything through us, short of the items that the museum itself would provide. So does Slugger Museum have any restrictions when it comes to decor, signage, branding, things of that nature? And really the answer to that is no. They do have a couple of caveats in their contract, as is pretty standard with venues and hotels, things like no open flame, no glitter, no confetti, things of that nature. But from a corporate branding perspective, bringing in signage, again, branded backdrops, florals, custom decor, furniture, things like that. They don't have any restrictions on that. But if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to our team and we'll be happy to talk you through your options. So can you host events during operating business hours for the Little Slugger? And the answer is absolutely yes. While there are some restrictions on some of the spaces, specifically the atrium in the museum, other spaces such as the clubhouse and the skybox that are located on the upper floors, you absolutely can use for breakfast, lunch, dinner meetings 7 days a week, and there's no time restrictions on those. Should you want to host an event in that atrium and museum space, they do have restrictions that the private events cannot start until the museum is closed. For most days, I believe that is around 4 p.m., but that will fluctuate a little bit depending upon season, other events they have going on and things of that nature.